Oh, Captain, my Captain, welcome to I Think Therefore I Slam, the podcast bringing you the best slam poetry and spoken word artists from Australia and beyond. I am giddy today, people, because my guest today has probably been name dropped on this podcast more than any single person, and long-time listeners will know that there's a certain magic in that people tend to gravitate towards the show after that happens. He's also the very first slam poet that I ever saw doing his thing. And for years, when I thought of the definition of slam poet, my guest's face appeared. From the Sydney Opera House to Nashville's Schermerhorn Symphony Centre to the Metropolis in Montreal, my guest has spent the last 15 years on global stages, captivating hundreds of thousands of people with his passionate, performative style and highly inspiring keynotes. He is simply one of Australia's most successful performance poets, having represented the country at the individual World Poetry Slam Championships, as well as being the Victorian Tasmanian Vice President of Professional Speakers Australia. He has published 7 poetry/music albums and is now transitioned into a children's author with the first book in a new trilogy out now through Penguin Random House. When I first met him, he had a lovely hair of dreadlocks, but they are a thing of the past. We'll get into that. Joel McKerrow, welcome on.
It is fantastic to be here, Andrew. Thanks so much for having me.
Joel, so much to talk about. I'm so glad to have just a little sliver of your time in what I'm sure is an absolute packed schedule for you. You're bouncing around the country for the book launch. How is it going?
It's going really well. Yeah, really good. So Heist is it's for teenagers. So it's not a poetry book, but all my writing is very poetic and lyrical, even if it's kind of a commercial heist story. So it's like Mission Impossible meets Charlie and the Chocolate Factory for teenagers. And it seems like it's going really well. I'm loving bringing it out into the world.
Brilliant. Like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, does it have like a really trippy scene in the tunnel?
Not quite, though I do love that scene. And I do love with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory that this old quirky, cranky, slightly crazy man is he's killing kids off right in front of their parents. They're just getting killed off one by one by one. And we just take that and go, oh yeah, that's fine. They can drown in the chocolate and they can get exploded and all the kind of things. It's great. What a good story.
Roald Dahl was a madman and certainly fueled the nightmare fuel of our childhood.
Totally.
All right, well, Joel, you're going to hit us with the first of your 3 pieces that you've brought with you today. Is there anything you wanted to preamble this one with?
Well, I'll preamble it by saying, so one of the major things that I love to do, I do a lot of speaking as well, corporate speaking, keynote speaking for events and conferences is one of the major things that I do, and also emceeing. So I love kind of integrating my poetry these days in with both keynote speaking and emceeing. So what I would say is as an MC, I would come onto the stage and I would say, welcome to the event or whatever it might be. But as a poet, I say this moment is an invitation. It is an offering, holding out its hand before you, beckoning you to slow down, exhale, breathe into this, lean into this. See, my fear is that you'll miss it. Blink and you'll skip it, disregard it, not notice. Get on with your day like nothing has changed. As somebody once said, is it possible that we can live our whole lives and never really meet the person who is living that life? Is it possible you've lived your whole life and never met the person who is living that life? But what if right now, in the words that are spoken, in the wisdom that is shared, in the stories laid bare, what if this was a moment for you to meet yourself again, greet yourself again, a seed planted again into the depth of who you are? For if something is germinating inside us, then entropy and our apathy shall not define us. What I am saying is, if you let it, this moment may just blow the dust from your veins. It may change the way you see this world. It may give you new eyes by which you see yourself. If you let it, this moment The present may be the moment that your life changes. Should you give yourself here, now, when everything in life wants to take you away from here, now, come with open hands and embrace the moment like it was a lover, like it was your father, like it was your child, like it was someone who meant everything to you. This moment is an offering, and it is stirring the ache that is inside you for something more, for something else, for something bigger, for something larger than you ever thought this moment could be. That is the offering of today.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. That is the Joel McKerrow MC magic. Oh, whoa, I got goosebumps, my friend. Now, Joel, I first came across your path way back in 2011. You were lecturing, or you were guest lecturing at like a theological college that I was studying at the time. We can get a bit more to that later. But I know that you've crossed the paths of many former guests on the show. Ren Rapture's spoken about you. John and Glazos has spoken about you. One of the most humbling things when I've performed is that a friend of mine very kindly said, "Hey, you kind of sound like Joel McKerrow when you perform." It was very, very nice to hear. And so I'm wondering, I didn't tell you I was going to do this, Joel, but would you humor me? I would love to show you my refined impression of you. Is that okay?
I would love it. I love seeing people's impression of me. That sounds great.
Okay. I mean this with love. They say, imitation's the sincerest form of flattery. So I'm going to do a short little excerpt from a piece that you wrote called For Tomorrow. So here's my Joel McKerrow, everyone. I met a man who saw the world differently. So I sat cross-legged at his feet and he told me, remember the past, but cast your eyes forward, for tomorrow our hope shall be a louder voice than our apathy. Our apathy shall finally take a step forward, and our steps forward shall lead us somewhere meaner, something hold meaning, like friends hold each other, crying, I am crying for this world to change. Tears of empathy, sometimes apathy, I cry today, for tomorrow even these tears shall be wiped from our faces. Lift your cheeks, though they are wet. There is one who shall collect them, yet hold them in his hands and call it the ocean.
Beautiful, mate. Beautiful. That is hilarious.
I've been wanting to show you that for a while, so I thought I'd
I love it. But you know what? It also speaks to the fact that for all of us and for any of your listeners who are beginning in the poetry scene and beginning to figure out their voice, the way we work out our voice, I think it's the same as like identity formation in terms of how we come to know ourselves. We come to know our own individual selves, our own identity through those who are around us. They are a mirror that reflect back to us who we could be in the world, and then we navigate our way out of that. And I think it's the same with the artistic voice, the poetic voice, the creative voice, is you figure out your voice as mirrors around you, the people that you're hearing, the people you are listening to and intaking. In your intro, I heard a bit of Shane Koizan in there. It was massive for me at the beginning. And guys like Anis Mojgani and a whole lot of other different poets that I absolutely emulated, because I think it was my way to find my voice. It was my way to go, this is the kind of sound that I want to have. So I don't think we should run away from that. I think we should embrace it all the way to when you're doing an For Tomorrow poem that I had written many years ago.
For sure. And look, you can't imitate something without it being distinct. Do you know what I mean? Yep. You've just been so distinct for so long that I thought I'd share the love there. So yes, cross paths in 2011, stuck in my head, but I'm sure there's a story even before that time. So what is kind of your origin story of starting to create and share your work on stage?
Yeah. So it's probably in two moments. my poetic origin story of just on the page. I mean, I'd written and stuff during high school and that kind of thing, but then it was a number of years, it was just a few years out of high school. It was quite a full on story. I was over on the border of Thailand and Burma doing some work in an orphanage for kids who had kind of escaped across the border out of Myanmar, out of Burma. Many of them seen their families killed, their tribes wiped out by the military dictatorship that happening over there. And I arrived at this orphanage the same time with a group of people, the same time as this mother arrived with a sick baby boy on her back and trying to find medical attention for that baby boy. She was from Burma. And as she arrived, she realized that her baby boy had just died on her back. And my obviously screaming, wailing, weeping mother, the worst moment in her life. I was given a shovel by the lady who runs the orphanage, lady named Mama Cat, told to walk up into the jungle and to with two of the orphan boys living there, and to dig a grave for this baby boy. And so I went and I dug this grave, and it shattered my life. It shattered my worldview, shattered my faith, my spirituality. I got angry. I was angry at the world, angry at Western society, angry at my parents, just angry. And I remember that night sitting in a little bamboo hut on the border of Thailand and Burma, and I could hear machine gun fire in the valleys beyond over in Burma, and I put pen to paper, and it came out as poetry. It was my way to take all that anger rumbling around inside and in a cathartic way bring it out onto the page. So that is really kind of the moment that kicked off my writing, in writing it itself. And then a while later, probably a year or two later, is when I the origin story around the performing on stage and performance poetry. A student of mine sent me a YouTube link to Anis Mojgani, a brilliant American poet, was a national poetry slam champion over there, and was over here a number of years ago. I got to host him, which was amazing, be the MC for his tour over here, which was wonderful. But I had that moment. It was my fall in love with spoken word moment, listening to this. I was like, this is performance and poetry. It's my thing. I need to do this. And so randomly a friend invited me to a night in Melbourne. I can't remember what night it was. One of the poetry nights, that slam poetry nights that happened in Melbourne the week after. And I went along, and Amy Bedosian was performing, who's been a staple name in the poetry scene in Melbourne for many, many years. And she was performing, and a bunch of others, and I just fell in love with it. So the next week I got up and performed and started performing all the time, and started going into the competitions, doing really well, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, they're kind of my starting moments.
Brilliant. And like so many origin stories that have been shared, the ability to take something, an experience that was obviously so dark and such a paradigm shift for you, and to turn it into something, again, so distinct and full of life, and that has been such a gift to, I want to say like a whole generation of Melbourne's kind of slam poets as we come through and find our voices, is wonderful. So thank you for sharing that with us, Job. I'm curious, we find ourselves in this age where attention spans, they're getting shorter, and us creatives, when we share stuff, we're not just kind of competing for space with other human writers, but also like machine writers now. I'm just wondering, what do you think makes spoken word poetry like so powerful and enduring and relevant as a medium today, even though things are changing so rapidly?
Yeah, totally. I mean, even with all of our generative AI, we could go there as to what almost feels like the extreme opposite of spoken word poetry. AI generated material. AI can write poetry. A lot of it's bad, but it's going to get better and better and better. AI can write poetry, but spoken word and human poets bring about a human authenticity that is going to be, and is now, and is going to be increasingly more so, incredibly important in our world today. As what do they reckon? 90% of social media is going to be totally AI generated within just a few short years. Like nearly all that we see in social media world, so much of what we're going to be experiencing and intaking is generative AI, is large language models. And so now I reckon in this age of AI, more than ever, the human craft of someone getting up on stage and taking the words that they have written from their own personal story, their own feelings, their own reality, not just throwing, I don't know, ChatGPT, write me a poem about hope, but dredging out of themselves hope in the places of darkness, then bringing that onto the stage with as much embodiment, as much personality, as much authenticity as they can. There's nothing that's going to break through more than that in what's going to be our very fake world very soon.
Couldn't agree more. And like a lot of creatives, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this and thinking about if I know that a poem or music or whatever has been made by a machine, that it is not being made by human hands, minds, souls, whatever, I'm really not that interested. Like, I'm not, when I look for music, I'm not just looking for background beeps and boops and noises. Like, I'm actually looking for a story. Do you know what I mean? So maybe that's not the way everyone feels about the arts. Like, I understand that not everyone values it in that way. I mean, big corporates certainly doesn't value it in that way. We could see a world where, a seal of guarantee of like 100% human origin comes at some kind of premium and holds extra importance within the creative community.
Totally. I really, really agree. That humanity is where it's at. And that's what spoken word has always been about. The messy, gritty, sweaty human reality.
Yeah, love it. To have been around for so long, Joel, and to have such a sustained time as a speaker and poet, I'm sure it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of kind of business savvy. And I think we see a lot of creatives struggling with the business side of things. We get a bit skittish when it comes to like, that side of things. Maybe it's not our strength, or we think, oh, who am I to do this or whatever. So that tension, how have you navigated that tension between, I guess, staying true to artistic vision, but also building a sustainable career and morphing and changing as you have into new fields?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, a major part that I realized over the years that I needed to do if this was going to become a sustainable business practice for me, is that I needed to do more than just be a slam poet performing to slam poets. And I want to honor the slam poetry scene, and it kicked me into my life and my career and my love and my everything that slam poetry has been for me. But if I'd stayed just doing slam poetry, there's no way that this would be a full-time reality for me. And so I think it's been really important, and maybe for listeners who are wanting to take this to the next career level, it's figuring out how can you take what you do within the slam poetry world and bring it out into the wider context, whatever niche, whatever something you might be able to speak into. Because in that place, like amongst the slam poetry scene, you are a slam poet amongst a bunch of slam poets and you'll have nights where it'll pop and things will go off and you'll get standing ovations, etc. But if you can bring that same passion, that same purpose, that same professional clarity, that dedication that you bring to your craft, you bring that into, for me, it began within the kind of festival scene and the conference scene and doing lots of work for not-for-profits. And I found a niche that was separate from the slam poetry niche, and I brought slam poetry into that. And as I did that, I became the distinctive. Like, your career is going to take off when you are the distinctive. Some people can do that within the slam poetry scene, be incredibly distinctive, but I don't think it's not large enough to foster a career. And so when I think of the people that I know who have stepped into the full-time career of it, they have found a space outside, be it sometimes within schools. I do a whole lot of schools work or conference work, or with corporates and organizations. Find what it is, the other thing that kind of overlaps and crosses over with the spoken word that you bring. And I think that's going to give you a way in a lot more. As you do that, then of course, one of as my career has progressed and as I perform poetry. Sometimes it's almost every day of the week. I'm performing poetry, be it to corporate conferences or be it within schools. I have to, as you said, retain that authentic love of just the writing and the craft, so that I don't lose myself trying to just do poetry that makes me money or whatever. It's not even about, I mean, we know it's not even about making money. That almost so strange. We have these aversions to even saying the word making money as a creative, as a poet. But I got a family to feed, and I've had to for many years, and like bills to pay, etc. We all do. And so, but in the midst of that, I've made sure every day I write poetry for myself. So my creative discipline, my creative practice for the last 12 years, I reckon, has been to write a poem every single day. And I have retained that. I have kept doing that. And some of those poems end up being the ones that I perform to people. Many of them don't. Many of them are junk, but the only way to write good poetry is allow yourself to write bad poetry every day. And so I show up and I write and I write and I create, and I put that mirror, that self-confrontative mirror that our poetry writing brings us, I put it up in front of my face and I learn who I am through that. So I think it's incredibly important to do both. Not incredibly, but like, you don't have to be a full-time career-based poet. I think there's few people who can do that. If that's what you're wanting to do, then you can head in that direction, as I said. But you can also just do it for the love of it and the craft of it. Totally. There's some rambling for you.
Oh, far from rambling. That's fantastic advice. I think it makes a lot of sense. You know, as much as the Melbourne and the Australian spoken word scene is thriving, you're right. It can be very insular. I think it's hard to get the word out about things. I think so many people I've heard say, "Oh, I never knew that there was this going on here," and you know, even when there is interest. So, even on our best day, I think we're still learning how to contribute to the wider Melbourne community. So you're saying that it's essentially, positioning yourself to take opportunities that have some overlap or something that you can offer with that skill set. Can you tell us about one particular, opportunity or place that you got to perform at that really kind of, broke things open for you, or was it more of a gradual?
Sure. Yeah, no, sure. And interestingly, so probably one of the major events that I've ever done was Story Gathering Conference over in Nashville. One of the biggest storytelling and narrative story-based professional storytellers kind of conferences in the world, right? With incredible people, Disney writers, Pixar animators, Nike's creative team, the storytelling team from NASA's, the kind of people there. And I was there because, like, this is the Lincoln in terms of picking up opportunities. I was there performing because the guy who ran it, his name's Harris. And Harris, I got to meet a few years earlier, connected to through a friend. And that friend that I got connected to Harris through, they had seen me perform in a little cafe. And that little cafe that I performed in was years earlier. I was sitting around at home we were in a share house at that point, was sitting around at home wondering about what we'll do on that night. Someone was like, "Oh, there's meant to be some creative arts night happening in Melbourne. Maybe we should go along." And we're all pretty tired. We're like, "Oh, I don't know." But then there was this tiny, tiny little spark. And I've learned to try to listen when a tiny, tiny little spark happens. I'm like, there's something in there. So I'm like, "No, Leah, let's go. So I rock up at this night. I get to the front door. The person on the front door is like, "Oh, you're Joel McKerrow. Aren't you a poet? Do you reckon you could do some poetry for us tonight?" I was like, "Sure, I'll jump up and do a poem." And took the opportunity, right? Jump up, do the poem. The person who saw me in the event ran a spoken word night. No, not a spoken word night. The creative night that was on there, who was running in Sydney the next night, said, "Hey, can I fly up to Sydney to do that tomorrow?" Flew up to Sydney. That person was the person who then saw me, that connected me to Harris, that connected me to Nashville, to doing Story Gathering. Literally, if I hadn't listened to that tiny little spark, I wouldn't have got to. And there's a number of other kind of spin-offs and things that have happened from that. If I hadn't listened to the spark, and if I hadn't been open to every single opportunity and worked hard at my craft enough that someone goes, oh, could you do a poem? And I can say, yep, of course, I'll jump up and do it. What do you want it on? How do you want it? Like, what's the thing? Picked that up. And so then there I get to perform in Nashville. And this was the gig, I think you said before, that I performed at the Schermerhorn Symphony Orchestra Hall in Nashville. This was this gig to thousands and thousands of story writers. And a beautiful thing about this moment is so my job was, and this is something that conferences, corporates get me to do, is to write poetry kind of on the spot in real time as keynote speakers are speaking, that I then jump up straight afterwards and perform back to the audience that are there, kind of a summative poetic moment. With this one, I had they also gave me a cellist. So I had a cellist playing improv cello music as I performed back the poetry of the moment. I ended up in tears. A lot of the audience, we had a really beautiful moment. And this lady came up afterwards and tapped me on the shoulder. And she said, she kind of was in tears still. She's like, oh, that was so beautiful. Thank you so much. Like, that moved me so much. I said, oh, no worries. I said, are you a writer too? She said, yeah. I write screenplays. Scripts to become movies. I said, oh, have you had any made into movies? She's like, yeah. She said, oh, I'm retiring now, but I've had a bunch made. I said, oh, would I know any? She's like, yeah, you would. I wrote Beauty and the Beast. I was like, are you Linda Wolverton? She said, yeah. I said, oh. So she wrote The Lion King, like Maleficent. This is Disney royalty. And we got to go and hang out then. And she's incredible, right? We got to have lunch and she was sharing about just two very quick things. I know this is a long rambling thing as well, but two very quick things she said. She goes, when I wrote the character Belle from Beauty and the Beast, she said, I wrote Belle as myself. Like, I took the best parts of who I was and she said she went before the decision makers of Disney that were old white men at that point. It's different now, but and she said, if I'm writing this is not just going to be another damsel in distress who needs to be rescued by a boy. This Belle's going to be smart and autonomous and creative and independent and stubborn and brave and strong and she's going to be a reader. She's going to walk around the town reading. She took all the best stuff of herself and brought it into her character. And then she said, when she wrote the character Mufasa, Simba's dad, she said she wrote Mufasa as the dad that she never had. She said she had a horrible upbringing, a really hard childhood. And then coming out of that, though, into her teen years, that's when she found story, and she would lose herself in movies and in books, and it changed her life. And then she picked up a pen and started writing her own stories. And I'll finish this little story with this. She said that how does she phrase it? She said, what I realized is in my own writing was that I could write a better story for myself than the one my dad had written for me. I could write a better story for myself than the one my dad had written for me. And that, isn't that where it's at? Like, that's what all of our writing, our poetry is about. It's about restoring ourselves and naming those things, parts of ourselves that other people tried to steal from us and tried to dictate what our story would be, and we get to reclaim that. That was a very long answer. I can't even remember what the original question was, but there you go.
That's incredible. The people that you run into, like you said, when you spend years refining your craft, but also building trust, there was a lot of trust involved in all those exchanges, trust and the reputation. It's really important. So, Joel, you now find yourself at a point where you have so much experience speaking publicly, professionally, like you said, all kinds of different contexts. I want to talk about public speaking because, public speaking is, I think, one of the number one or maybe the second biggest fear in the world. People really, really detest it, avoid it, fear it in a big way. Most of the world does. Why do you think it is a fear for so many people? And how can becoming a better public speaker change people's lives?
Yeah. I think in many ways, it's the fear of standing out. Like, it's the fear of so much of our life, I think, is especially in our teenage years, is edited, and we project a certain version of ourselves out into the world that we want the world to see us as, and we have control of that. And in a social media land as well, we have control of the version of ourselves that we project out that other people get to see. But when you're on stage in front of lots of people, you don't necessarily, you have control, right? When you are professional at it, you get a lot more. When you're doing it all the time, when you got a lot of reps of being on stage, then you're much better at it. But to begin with, which is where most people are at, and where most people who really fear it are at, there's a sense that you could, one, that you are being seen by people. And as much as you want to, you do, obviously you're projecting as you get onto stage for sure, no matter what stage you are on or what stage of writing and creativity and performance you're at, you're still projecting, but there is this sense of vulnerability, of authenticity as well. And there's also the reality that there's the fear that you're going to stand out, stuff up, look weird, look strange, etc., etc. And so I think that makes us nervous to get on stage and stops us from doing that. One of the things that I've often said, so when I grew up, my early teenage years, I was petrified of speaking on the stage. I'd chuck a sickie at school every time we'd have speaking events and pretend to be sick. And now it's the thing that I do every day. But I remember the change in it. I grew up in church world, and I remember a friend invited me along when I was maybe 15 or 16 or something to speak like at their youth group to the young guys there. And I hated speaking, but I still had this thing inside me. At that point, I thought I was going to be a big megachurch preacher, right? I had this thing, I knew that I was going to be out the front of people, and that was my context, because that's the world that I knew was church world. And so a friend invited me to speak at youth group. I didn't want to do it, like petrified, feeling sick, but I got up and did it. And in the midst of the fear, I remember like afterwards, this kid came up and said, "Oh, I felt like you were just speaking to me. Like I didn't know anyone had my kind of story, the same story, but hearing it, I just don't feel so alone anymore." And I couldn't have put it in these words then, but what I realized, what I have to say is more important than the fear that stops me from saying it. And so though there was a whole lot of fear for many years there, that was the mantra I just kept on repeating, not exactly in those words, but like the things I have to say, if I can help one kid be less lonely, isn't that worth the nerves that I'm feeling? So it's like getting over myself, choosing to step on stage and give it anyway, even in the midst of the nerves. And then you do it enough times and you don't get so nervous anymore.
And maybe, part of that fear for people might come from some kind of formative experience, where something went wrong on stage, or they were jeered for something, or whatever. I mean, we see it all the time.
Or for us rangers, our faces go red all the time. And it's not because we're nervous or embarrassed, but there was a moment in like year 7 where a teacher pointed out I said something cheeky, and a teacher points out my face going red in the class, and everyone else was looking at you going, "Your face is going red, your face is going red." So then it goes even more red. And I've learned to embrace that over the years. It's my genetics. That's what happens. But it's those kind of things as well. It's those moments that really bring about the fear as well.
That's such a painful, that's such a cringing memory, I should say. It's like, someone's having a physiological response to discomfort. Look at the weirdo,
Yeah, totally. It's a shocker.
And I'm sure people might make assumptions about you and go, "Oh, you make it look so easy, you look so relaxed, whatever." I don't know if this is what it's like for you, but like every time I'm on stage, there's always some butterflies going on. There's always some nerves. I wouldn't want there not to be. I would want a little bit of that to keep me sharp. Does that ever go away, or is it still there for you as well?
Look, I think I think it's different for different people. Like a lot of the time it's not there. So a lot of the time these days, I don't feel nervous when I'm performing. There's definitely performances when I do. And it's often if it's like a big crowd or a significant moment, or if I'm doing something new, if I'm whatever it might be. But because I do so much performing, I think kind of the normal everyday performances that I might do, whether it's at a cafe or a school or whatever, in front of 30, 40, 50 people, then I don't necessarily feel nervous about. I have a capacity to tap into the authenticity, even though I'm not feeling nervous. And But I know many friends who still get nervous every time they get up on stage, and they've been doing it for as long as I have. I think there's just I have that weird kind of personality that loves the stage, as sometimes as nerve-wracking as it can be. I love being out the front of people and sharing thoughts and ideas and my poetry. So I think it's okay to be either. I think it's okay to feel nervous, and it's okay to not as well, as long as you can tap in to an energy source, or maybe it's because I spent many years transforming that, like intentionally transforming that nervous energy into passion energy, like on stage passion energy. I think the more we can do that, then as soon as nerves begin to come up, I grab a hold of it and transform it again and go, no, this is passion. This is what I want to bring, not just because I'm fearful and nervous.
Yeah, wonderful. So, continual exposure, continual professionalism, and I think you get there eventually. Thanks for all that, Joel. I think we're ready for piece number 2.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. What I thought I would actually read out. So I write a poem every day. So I thought I'd write my poem out from yesterday, which I have right here. No, this was not from yesterday, the day before, up in Sydney. And this is the poem. This is the first draft. Remember, every first draft is meant to be shit. That's the whole idea of a first draft. And so it goes something like this. I take myself away, dream another day, take my frail ways and write them out on paper. I'm drinking coffee, 6 a.m. on a Sydney street in a flat white morning bright traffic light, and the lineup of tired eyes at the coffee shop. He stands before me, his muscles rippling. He's been working out since 5 a.m. I've been hurting through my heart again. These words again, these verbs are friends, a sentence is a partner until the end. Pretend all you want, but I need a way to excavate. This pen is a shovel and the rubble is a memory. I'm digging trouble off a messy me. These frail ways, past mistakes, like the way I shut her down without me even realizing, like the too harsh words spoken, like the broken promise, the ego trip, the ripped up note, the leaky boat. But I wrote my way out of those regrets, and I'll keep writing my way out of these regrets, digging deep enough for a new foundation, ground made solid. This architect pen, this blueprint. Muscle man is gone from the line now, but the dog walkers have come, and her dog looks up at me, and I wonder what it sees, how its eyes are different from mine, seeing the world in a different way, a different color, a different day. And isn't this what I do with this pen of mine? These words written, none I learning how to see different. The news this morning told me some scientists have worked out a way for us to see a totally different color, one no human has ever seen before. The smallest percentage of the color spectrum is all we can see. So why stay small, claim I know all I need to, when there are new colors out there to find, new life, new memories? And isn't this what I do every day? Take the world they see and remind them of the colors they do not, plumb the depths of this reality so that normality ain't so normal anymore, so that the mundane ain't so mundane. Strain your eyes to see, lift your ears to hear, like the dog here, this one with his satellite ears circling around, hearing a world I had no idea even existed. Come on, this is why I do what I do. This is why I do what I do.
Woo! And as you were saying, that one might be just for you, or it might make its way to the stage. But there's plenty more where that came from.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that one.
No, I loved it. Thanks, Joel. Joel, as I mentioned before, I crossed paths with you when you were guest lecturing at a theological college I was studying at. Some of your lectures, parts of them still stick with me. I remember a certain quote from you saying that words to the effect of, you can't talk about creativity without ending up talking about spirituality, and you can't talk about spirituality without ending up talking about creativity. And
that sounds like something I'd say.
Yeah. And that just, I don't know, that just went off like a gong inside me at the time, and still does. And you were, speaking about the intersection of, I guess, faith and art and justice and other things that really light me up. So I'm wondering, how has your, I guess, spiritual journey influenced your creative expression over the years?
Yeah, great. So I grew up in quite conservative evangelical Christianity, black and white kind of world of a Christianity. I had a number of experiences then, one of them actually being that that key experience of having to bury that child when my poetry began, and a number of other experiences around that time and earlier in the lead up, and where the culture that I was brought up in and the absolutes that I was told and the doctrines that I held started to, the firm foundation that they were for my childhood started to crumble and fracture. And I needed a way to process through that. And as I said, like that way began for me on the border of Thailand and Burma, writing that poem. And then it has continued to be that. As I've gone on the journey of trying to figure out what I believe and who I am and how my spirituality or my faith plays out these days. Like, as I figure out what do I want to leave behind from my upbringing, and what are the beautiful things that I want to hold on to. In my growing up years, when I first kind of went, there's so much hypocrisy in the church, screw all this, screw everything to do with it, like, and went that way. But I think learning how to hold on to beautiful things is really important, and learning what to let go of is really important. And the creative process for me has been the thing that's allowed me to articulate that. It's allowed me to look at my own spirituality, my own faith, my own belief system, figure out my way forward, and I suppose take the creative path that I've taken, the poetry that I write. It absolutely is both my way of plumbing my own depths and plumbing the depths of something we might call God, of some spiritual, creative faith. It's still incredibly vibrant in my life. Looks nothing like the faith I grew up in many ways, but it's still strong and blossoming, for want of a better word. Like, it's still growing, and like there's still fire there, there's still passion there. It just looks really different, and the creativity, like, that's been the thing 100% that has opened up my insides, allowed me to be present, like the poem that we began with, and allowed me to be present to myself, allowed me to be present to the divine, to God, allowed me to be present to the world that's around me. It's been everything for me. I don't think, if I hadn't have found poetry, I don't think I'd still have I would, of course, we all have a belief system, but I don't think I'd still have as an intentional belief system, spiritual system, faith system as I do now, that I have sweated my way poetically through to come to an understanding of, this is what I'm about. So it's been everything. Yeah.
Beautifully said, Joel. And I appreciate that, now, and also in those lectures all those years ago, you were really giving language to something that hadn't really happened to me yet. And now kind of has and is. And so, that transition away from like my heart being into like, systemic theology or whatever, and now more into poetry. Like, when I talk about these things, I think poetic language is more appropriate, because we're talking about things, beyond the literal.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, that's exactly where the poetry, why I think it's so effective, is because poetry is trying to name those things that we can't name, trying to articulate the things that we can't articulate. One of my favorite theology kind of books that I read way back in the day that helped me was by Peter Rowlands, called How Not to Speak of God. That this God construct that we speak of, we can use metaphors for, we can use descriptive words for, but there's no, like, any word that we use is still just skimming the top of the infinite, skimming the top of the ocean. And so poetry, has allowed me to not try to define the ocean, but to swim in that ocean that is God and faith and life. Yeah, to swim in it and enjoy it and go, I don't have to have the answers here. I can just be.
And And I know that you really deep dived and explored some of these ideas through your own podcast, the Deep Place, for a long time. Now, I've been really enjoying my listening of it, but I know it's been a while since y'all have had any episodes. Is it coming back, or has it been laid to rest?
It will when I have time. No, I'd love it to. So I think we're up to the third season, and I've kind of done. It was like a season and a year gap, and a season and a year gap, and now I've done another season. I've probably had a year and a half or 2 years gap now. Life has gotten in the way, but I do want to bring it back at some point. I think I've really loved doing that podcast over the years.
Oh, fantastic. I was totally expecting you to say, no, it's been, it's had its time or whatever, but now I'm really excited. It's a great listen.
Thank you. Sometime I'll get back to it.
I'm wondering if you had any perspective on this. So, myself growing up in church world as well, and being like a bit of a punk rock kid, I was loving, my mute math, my anti-skeptic, my switchfoot, my whatever. I've noticed something, and maybe this isn't actually a thing. Maybe this is something that my algorithm is feeding me as some kind of narrative. That's why I need some perspective. But this concept of the Christian artist versus the artist who is a Christian, and this is not a new thought, but sometimes there's been like contemporary Christian music artists, like, back in the day, let's say Andy Grant, or more recently, like a Laura Daigle, or like a Lifehouse or something. And, they might have some kind of big crossover hit, right? And they find themselves being listened to like a wider audience. And then sometimes the narrative changes, because all of a sudden there's all these expectations that, is there some kind of expectation that we're now expecting these artists to be some kind of mouthpiece for the church, even though, they're going along their own creative path. And I think sometimes things can get quite nasty when people go, oh, this person's, changing or whatever. Do you think there is some kind of, I don't know if you'd call that like a glass ceiling, but like, how are we going with like championing artists in the church without trying to like control what they do too much?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a massive cultural question, and it changes as to the culture. Like, I think Australian culture is very different to American culture, especially in this regard. So many of those, the ones that you mentioned, except for anti-skeptic, come out of like that American kind of culture, right? That is intensely, weirdly Christian, right wing, like all that cultural stuff that is so much of Christianity over in America. It's quite different here in Australia, I think, thankfully, though there is leanings towards that, which is scary and I hate and can't believe that. But this to say, I think whenever we put the term Christian as a descriptor of music, like that's more a commercialism advertising thing. Like, it's trying to put people into a box so that they can sell what was called in my day, I don't know what it's called these days, but in my day when I used to listen to all that Christian music, was called contemporary Christian music. CCM was the industry, was the scene. That scene made a lot of money and realized the people who were running that scene realized they could make a lot of money if they had very stringent protective borders on who contemporary Christian music was written by, because that scene over there, that cultural scene, has very stringent protective borders around the whole everything to do with their faith, right? I mean, I don't know the Christian cultural scene enough at all today. I'm not part of it in any sense, in that world at all. And so I don't know whether it's better or different or not. What I would say is that I think if you find an artist who's just, like I just finished watching last night, the Bob Dylan biopic, whatever the name of it was, that came out really recently, Complete Unknown, which was great, and I thought they could have done better in different parts. But anyway, this to say, I think no matter who we're listening to, I would never listen to someone these days and say, oh, that's a Christian artist. Oh, that's a secular artist. Such a weird Christian culture distinction. so I think it's just embracing whoever you want to embrace and loving whatever music's coming out from whatever music you love to hear.
Yeah, for sure. Just keeping it simple, I suppose. Good stuff. Thanks, Joel. I appreciate you. Just grappling with the questions. Now, you nowadays you really have turned a creative corner. You know, you've dived headfirst into children's fiction. I know that you started with a graphic novel of sorts through Larrikin House Publishing. My old mate James Layton taking care of you there.
Oh, Leighton. Yeah.
Layton, yeah, he was my youth pastor many years ago. He's a good bloke. Yeah, and now, of course, are starting this new heist trilogy with Penguin Random House. So branching into fiction, stepping up into public speakers Australia, professional speakers Australia, I should say. What has it been like to start to work on new things, new endeavours, and expand what you are known for, I suppose, and what you do?
Well, I mean, this is the other thing that I should have said and will say now to any listeners who are wanting to continue to develop themselves, both career-wise and artistically wise. Don't settle for becoming called a slam poet. You are not a slam poet. That's a part of what you do, 100%. But geez, you can be so much more. There is people who can zero in on one particular thing and just slam poetry from the stage in a slam poetry mode might be their thing. But even if that's your thing, you start grabbing ideas and creative practices and modes from other modalities. It can only enhance what you were doing on the stage in that slam poetry moment. And so I've always been someone that's pushed myself to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. I started off within the slam poetry scene, but very quickly was like, I need some music with this. Mina Shamali. Have you had Mina on the podcast? Have you heard Mina Shamali? He's a beautiful man who's a poet and a musician. So I got him to come alongside, and then a bunch of other musicians who would come and they'd play music with my poetry. So I went into that. I went into making then the poetry videos. I started branching out, as I said, out of the poetry world and starting to perform and do stuff more for others who not part of the poetry scene. Then started writing more stuff as differently as well. Started bringing in fiction works and writing more fiction style. Then over COVID, and theatre as well. So before COVID, I wrote and performed, starred in a theatre show called The People of the Sun with Anna McGahn, who was another big part of the poetry scene for a long time. And then started going into more the fiction stuff over COVID, wrote these fiction stories for kids, and that turned into a graphic novel series, and then I was turned into Penguin. I'm writing verse novels at the moment as well with some verse novelists. I'm writing more fiction stories, fantasy stories. I'm writing poetry every day. I don't think there's any excuse for not broadening yourself out as much as you can, even if, as I said, even if the output is going to be your 3 minutes on stage at a slam poetry event. It's going to become better because you play with improv theatre, because you play with physical theatre, because you I went to a stand-up comedy. I literally just walked into a stand-up comedy night the other night just to be a part of it. I was walking along the street and the doors were open. It said stand-up comedy. And so bringing comedy, like, I think it's an imperative for any artist to be stretching themselves out and pushing themselves in new ways all the time.
Love that. In amongst all the new stuff, is there a project or an idea or an art form that you haven't explored yet, but that you would love to pursue given the time, the resources?
Oh, I'm sure there is. Over COVID, at the start of COVID too, I was doing a lot of painting. It became my thing for a while, and I brought together bringing together poetry and painting, and also etching the drawings onto the back of skateboards, and did a whole exhibition of those, online exhibition at the start of COVID. Yeah. Which was really fun, called Human, an Exploration of the Inner Life, based all around the Enneagram, if anyone knows the Enneagram.
Yes.
But these days, what have I not? Well, actually, I had a really great conversation the other day and was trying to hold it in with an event manager in another state. And she was talking about how a bunch of the events she does, she works with in Western Australia, she works with the Western Australia Symphony Orchestra, and she's like, "Oh, I would love you to come and do some work with an orchestra, with Western Australia Symphony Orchestra, on an event sometime. Let's work it out." And inside, I'm like, this has been like a dream of mine all my life. I'd love to do poetry with a symphony orchestra. I know there's a few of, I think Luca Lesson has done some work with symphony. I'd love, that would be a real, but I had to hold it in. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I could do that. That sounds like something I could be into. And my insides are going, yes, please make it happen, make it happen. So yeah, maybe performing with a symphony orchestra would be next level amazing. I'd love it.
Oh, I'm sure it would. So, Sleeping at Last creates those songs about the Enneagram, and you're out here making
yes.
state decks. I love it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it was a whole series on each Enneagram type. I wrote a poem for, etc.
So what's next for you, Joel? Obviously, you got your hands full with touring at the moment, but what do you see the rest of 2025 holding for you?
I'm pretty booked out for 2025, which is lovely. I have a number of different festivals and events. So I do a lot of the writing festival. I'm about to go up soon to Sydney Writers Festival. I'm hosting, speaking and hosting all the primary school days for that. And then I have another literary festival, Words on the Waves. Then I've got ASLA, which is the Australian School Librarians Association. Then I'm up in Cairns for the Cairns Tropical Innovation Festival, where I'm speaking about creativity and innovation. Yeah, which will be fun. I'm heading over. I just got invited back to Story Gathering. So I'm heading over to America later this year for 2 conferences for Promoting Passion Conference, this incredible photography creativity gathering. And then we'll stick around for a week and then go to Story Gathering in Nashville again. So super excited to be back at that. I'm doing the Dimmick's Children's Charity Festival. I'm doing Once Upon a Festival as a schools literary festival in Adelaide. I'm doing tons and tons of schools, so lots and lots, which is the way that I like it. I'm doing lots and I'm also writing lots. So I'm the kind of crazy person who has like 10 different projects on at the same time. I got my own verse novel trilogy that I'm writing at the moment. I'm writing a verse novel with a wonderful verse novelist who won the CBCA, which is the Children's Book Council of Australia award last year, the year before, for her verse novel Grace Notes. So we're doing a collaborative thing together. I've got a fantasy series trilogy that I'm writing and pitching to Penguin soon. I've got another series as well. So I'm constantly, all the things is the answer. I love being busy. I love creating. I love being as prolific as I can. I get up at 6 a.m. most mornings and I write and I write and I write. And if I don't have anything on that day, I'll just keep on writing until the day ends. I love it.
Mate, it's so great to hear that you're so full of vitality and that's, success is coming your way. It's so well deserved, and good on you for getting back into Nashville. I know a lot of people are kind of opting out of going to the US at the moment, but
that's a little bit. Yeah,
we're doing art.
No, well, there's a part of me that's like, shit, will I? Hopefully it'll be fine. Who knows?
Watch out for ice when you get there. You'll be right.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, coming to kind of the pointy end of our time together, Joel, and kind of back to the orchestra thing, we have this overarching analogy for season 2 where I asked my guests, if your creative work was an instrument in an orchestra, a creative work orchestra, what instrument do you think it is, Joel?
I think what I would like it to be, I think probably what it is I love the moment in an orchestra where the lead violinist, where the first violinist just starts to take off and separates out from kind of distinctively. You start to hear the higher notes of that first violinist come in and plays like almost the violin solo. It's like that melody that just lifts above what is happening and people take notice of. People, like, it's the one for me that moves me the most, that when I hear the violinist start to go there, I'm like, I lean into the moment. My hope is that my poetry is that kind of moment for people that, or that parts of my poetry are that they're hearing what I do, and then I tap into to a certain way, and they start leaning in and hearing those beautiful notes of the violinist. Maybe that's what I'd say.
Is it the violin that also helps the other instruments kind of tune at the start? They kind of play one note, they go, "Eh," and that's the warm up.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think it could be. Yeah, I'll have to go back to my orchestra friends to ask them, but I think it could be the lead violinist, the first violinist who does that too, which is kind of nice too. I like that analogy.
For sure, for sure. Well, thank you for being a part of our orchestra. Now, you've been left a question from my previous guest. This is the segment called "The Diary of a Poet." The question is from Ren Rapture.
Oh, Ren!
Yeah.
She better have asked me a good question, Ren.
And the question is, Joel McKerrow, what do you really want to say?
Oh, yeah, that's the kind of question she would ask. Maybe for listeners, what I want to say is this. When you're on the stage, you are there to serve the people that are sitting in front of you. And what that means for me, something that when I go to poetry events and poetry slam events, one of the things that we see too often is we see poets bleeding on the stage. And I think, in other words, poets going through therapy on the stage, that they are bringing and this is not to say don't bring your authentic story and your authentic voice, but I think it's about tell the story of your scars, not of your open wounds. If you're in the midst of an open wound kind of story, then you don't need to share that in front of 80 strangers. And because you doing that, it's actually more about you, not about you serving the people who you've come to. And we've all had those, we all know those moments at poetry nights and poetry events where it feels like someone is trying to suck counseling energy from the stage and from the people there. And I think it does them and the audience a disservice. Again, not to say that we shouldn't show up in our vulnerabilities and our authenticity and talk about the hard things and the things that matter, and sometimes the things that are current and present. But if we get, I suppose what I'd say to people is that if you get down from stage and someone says, "Oh yeah, well, that was an average piece of poetry," if that shatters you, then you've shared something too quickly. Like, hold on to it and let it percolate. Let it be for you. Like, do your writing for you and then offer it as a gift to this world. Do the therapeutic, cathartic work that writing gives us, but don't demand your audience to be a counselor for you.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very wise, and it's very similar to something John and Glazos and myself discussed on his episode as well. Yeah, just feeling a bit of a sense of responsibility to care for the audience and not lead them in a space where they feel like they have to carry you, rather than experiencing something with you or being carried. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put
Very
it.
good.
Yeah, that's my answer to Ren's question.
Absolutely. It's a good one. Joel, you now have the responsibility, nay the honor, nay the responsibility to leave a question for the next guest, sight unseen. So what do you want to ask?
Oh, what should I ask? Has there been a moment where you have felt like things are falling apart or have fallen apart, and it's looked dire, it's looked down, it has not looked good, whether it's in performance or in just in life in general, and something has turned that around? What was that thing? Were you able to turn around a dark moment and bring about a transformation of that into something beautiful? What did that look like for you?
Wow, fantastic question. And I know that you've shared, your own experiences of turning dark to light as well. Joel McKerrow, if people want to find out more about you, follow what you're up to all over the world, check out your books and all your amazing back catalogue of work, where's the best places they can go?
So joelmckerrow.com is my website, and it will be interesting for people to check out anyway, because I have specifically and purposefully pivoted that website to being a corporate speaker website, a keynote speaker website. So if you go there, you'll notice that it's quite different to maybe just a slam poets website, and very intentionally so. So it could be good to have a look at that, and in that you can see there's still the section of writing, still all my poetry videos, still connections to Spotify, to my podcast, to my albums, to my books, etc. I'm on Instagram and occasionally on Facebook stuff as well. LinkedIn I'm on these days as the main kind of things that I use in terms of socials. So you can find me on there. But yeah.
Brilliant. And we'll have, links to all of that in the episode description as normal. Joel, you got one more piece you're going to leave us with before we call curtains.
Yeah, great. So maybe this piece of mine is an older piece, but I love to do it, especially for poets, to remind us of why we do what we do. It's a piece called Cartography, and it goes something like this. See, I once saw a girl empty herself out upon a napkin. Ink met tears, and the paper wept. She screwed it up, threw it down, and walked away. A teenager, I couldn't help myself. I reached over, took her crumpled story, and I laid it gently out upon the table. You see, paper is a precious thing. It is willing. It takes in upon itself our very wounds, our very wishes, our splotch and splatter, the blot of ink on paper, spilt lyrics like spilt milk, spilt rhythm, spilt rhyme. She spilt this time, so I leant over the words and studied the contours. This crumpled map of sorrow, a poetry spilt as mountain on parchment, a deep lake and the cut-through river, a valley where the lonely wander, and a forest too dark. Guided only by the map of ink spilt on napkin, I found myself walking the edges of her life. You see, cartography, it is based on the premise that reality can be modeled, like the stretch of a landscape laid flat out on the paper. For we writers, we are sailors, and our ships are our craft, and the ocean is our imagination, and the wind that fills our sails is something that we know but can barely even name, yet it drives us forward, a gale that began inside us. Every word is an island, every story is a mountain. Every time I speak, I am drawing this world for you. I am setting sail, a navigation. We are sailors, we are the map makers, tracing lines of a land that others cannot see, the uncharted and the unresolved. There be dragons here. There be shadow, and there be nightmare, and there be wonders more beautiful than you could ever imagine in this writing, the direction, the way through. A writer and a cartographer, they are one and the same. So come sail with me, friends. Be curious with me. Wonder with me. See artistry where others only see ugly. And you go inside. Sail inside. Name those parts of yourself you have been too afraid to name before. Come sailing with me, friends. Come sailing with me. And as you scribe your life down on paper, may that paper become the map that others need to find their way home. Offer it as a gift to this world. Come sail with me, friends. Come sail with me.
Wow. John McKerrow, I am deeply, deeply grateful for your time here today, and grateful for your leadership and the fact that you have written a map for so many of us to follow. So thank you for thinking with us and slamming with us today.
Oh, thank you so much, mate. It's been a privilege to get to be on your podcast. I love it. Thanks, Andrew.